Good afternoon. Yesterday we have discussed regarding types of gates. So in the last class we have concluded only up to top gating system. Now we are going to study the bottom gate, parting line gate and step gate. So first one is bottom gate. Here the gating system lies below the parting line, that is in the drag part. So here you can see this. So here this is the parting line. This is scope, this is the drag, and here we have runner. So this is one type. Another type of gating system is horn gate in the bottom gating system itself. So here we are going to have a gating system similar to this. If this is the casting, then we are going to have sprue, runner, gates. Okay, this is the mold cavity. And here is the riser. This is called as a horn gate. I'll explain this one by one. Then we have reverse horn gate system as well. Here again casting. This is reverse horn gate. So in order to overcome the drawbacks or demerits of top gating system, we have this bottom gating system, which are generally used for heavy castings. In case of the heavy castings, we cannot make use of top gating system because the amount of metal that we are going to pour will be more, and because of the impact of this molten metal on the bottom part of the mold cavity takes place, and because of this the sand erosion problem will occur, and in order to overcome this sand erosion problem, the foundrymen started making use of bottom gating system. Okay, so here the splashing effect will not be there, whereas in case of top gate, as we have discussed yesterday, there will be something called as a splashing effect. The metal, as soon as it falls, it will try to stick one or two molecules of that molten metal will stick to the mold also. It is a top gating system. The best example I can tell you is how we pour the water in the ice tray. Okay, so that is water, when it solidifies, it becomes ice cube, right? So when we put the water in the ice tray, that is nothing but top gating system. Okay, but in order to overcome that splashing effect, as well as in order to overcome the sand erosion problem that takes place in the top gate, this bottom gate is used. Okay, so here the problem will be only with the gas entrapment, and that too can be reduced by further modification of this particular aspect. So here you see the runner as well as the gates and in gates lies below the parting line. So as it lies below the parting line, we call it as bottom gate. Here parting line is a reference line. Okay, if runners and risers rise above the parting line, we call it as top gate. If they lie below, then we call it as bottom gate. Keep it in mind, bottom gate is always used for heavy castings. Okay, this is one general type of bottom gate. In certain castings with a complex geometry, we generally make use of this particular part called as horn gate. As this geometry resembles the horn of the animal, so we call it as horn gate. Here what happens, the molten metal is made to enter the mold cavity with this particular curvature. Here the sharp edges are not there, so sand erosion problem will be automatically reduced, and as the metal has to travel for the longer distance, the gas entrapment will also be reduced. But only problem with this is the pouring time. It takes more pouring time. And here you see this part compared to this part. Here cross section is more as compared to this cross section. Because of this, the molten metal that is entering in this particular cavity will be having a higher velocity, and this may lead to sand erosion problem in case of very heavy castings, or if the green compression strength of this particular mold is less. So in order to overcome this, we have this particular type of gating system. We call it as reverse gating system. Here cross section of this as compared to cross section of this is greater. Okay, this is greater. Thus the velocity of the molten metal entering the mold cavity can be reduced, thus making the things much more simpler. This type of system is used for light alloys like aluminum and magnesium. Okay. Here the demerit is the construction most of the times, so that becomes one of the problem. Okay, the yield will be comparatively less as the distance traveled by the molten metal will be more. The amount of metal that is going to come as a fettled component or fettling waste, that we generally call it as, is more. So yield will be comparatively less. So this is about bottom gate. Now we are going to see the parting line gate. Next we have parting line gate. This is one type. We have another type with a skim bob. This is the skim bob. Other elements of the gating system remain same, as well as the components of the sand molding will remain same. This is skim bob. We have something called as a riser screw as well. So here you can see the demerits of the bottom gating system is overcome over here. Generally, we are going to get a good directional solidification in such type of gating system. Here, the gating system lies exactly on the parting line. That is the reason we call it as parting line gating system. In most of the castings, from lightweight to medium weight castings, we generally make use of parting line gating system, especially where machine molding will be there. The Zolt and squeeze machine that we have studied in unit number 2, in such type of cases, we make use of parting line gating system. The patterns are made in such a way that some part of the pattern along with the gating system comes in the cope part, and some parts of the gating system along with the drag part of the casting comes in the drag part. Okay, so here you can see this is the most general one that we have seen from unit number 2 as well as in a studies class up to the elements of the gating system. Here one more type, here we make use of something called as a skim bob. The application of the skim bob is it restricts the entry of the slag into the mold cavity. In such cases, there is no requirement of ceramic filters. The drawback of ceramic filters is that sometimes a small breakage of this ceramic filter will cause an inclusion defect in the casting, and these inclusions are very difficult to machine. Okay, and subsequently they come up as a machining defect as well as they are going to hamper the cutting tool during machining. So in order to avoid that, in most of the cases we make use of something called as skim bob. What this skim bob actually does is the slag will be entrapped over here at the top part, as slag being lighter in weight or smaller in density as compared to the molten metal, it tries to float above, and because of that the slag is restricted over here, and the remaining part of the molten metal inside this is going to act as a feeder. Okay, as and when the metal strings over here, it is supplied through this skim bob. So there are two different applications of this skim bob. It acts as a minor riser. Okay, in another type of gating system, in the parting line gating system itself, we have this part, we call it as riser sprue. The geometry of this riser sprue is similar to that of the sprue itself. That is the reason we call it as riser sprue. This not only acts as a riser, but also it helps in the escapement of gases. Okay, so this is about parting line gating system. So always keep it in mind, the gating system are classified according to their location as well as geometry. In the last part, now step gating system, we are going to see about the geometry. Okay. Here we are going to have the gates in a step-by-step manner. So for example, over here, this is the casting, this is the parting line, this is the runner 1, runner 2, runner 3, this is pouring basin, this is riser. The castings which weighs in tons, generally it becomes very difficult to cast using parting line gating system or top gating system or bottom gating system, because they have their own demerits. So in order to get directional solidification, in order to eliminate sand erosion, in order to have a good permeability, that is ability to pass the gases in case of this. All these constraints has to be taken care of along with the casting yield so that there should not be more rejection. So this step gating system was introduced. There you can see the gates are situated step by step. The cross-sectional area of the bottom gate is smaller. As it goes on increasing, its area also goes on increasing. Okay, this type of gating system is used for heavy castings. It is going to produce a sound casting. Okay, sound casting in the sense a very good quality casting. But only the drawback with this type of gating system is casting it. As we are going to have a number of runners over here, this is all attached to the fettled component. We are going to have the fettling losses which are going to be more. Okay, so that is only the drawback of this step gating system. Then the question arises, which type of gating system should be used and when? So these are generally selected based on the type of metal we are going to cast. As I told you in the first class, whatever metals that can be melted, all those metals can be casted. Okay, so here it depends upon the type of metal. Second thing is the weight of the casting. Third thing is the casting yield, and the fourth one is geometrical complexity. Okay, so depending on all this, we are going to select which type of gating system to use. Another important aspect is the type of binders we are going to make use of. That is a very important role. Okay, because in case of green sand molds, the gas evolution will be very less, whereas in case of the chemical bonded molding system like no-bake molds, the gas evolution is predominant. Always keep it in mind, the gas evolution should not exceed 14 ml per gram, that is 14 milliliters per gram. Suppose 1 gram of sand if you take and heat it, it should not generate the gas more than 14 milliliters. That is what this gas evolution indicates. If it exceeds, then definitely we are going to get the defects. Okay, so if we get the casting is rejected, and that is nothing but a loss to the company. So always every company tries to achieve a component which is good, that is free from defects. Okay, I hope you understood the types of gating system. Okay, now coming to another important aspect, that is riser. Okay, prior to that riser, we will discuss something called as a gating ratio. As this plays a very important role, gating ratio, and I want to discuss it early because we have seen horn gate and reverse horn gate. So before understanding the concept of this, we have to see this gating ratio. It is the ratio of cross-sectional area of sprue to runner to ingates. Again, we have two types. One is pressurized, another one is non-pressurized. We have area here as 1:2:1 or 1:2:1.5. Here generally it will be 1:4:4. So this is used for steel, ferrous castings, whereas this is used for light alloys like aluminum. Okay, this gating ratio plays a very important role in case of gating system design. So here we are going to have something called as the cross-sectional area of the sprue compared to cross-sectional area of the runner compared to cross-sectional area of the ingates. If the total area of runner and ingate is more compared to that of the sprue, then we call it as non-pressurized gating system. Generally, the metals which produces dross formation takes place in case of aluminum and magnesium. Generally, it happens with light alloys. So there we are going to have non-pressurized gating system. Okay. Whereas in case of pressurized gating system, we are going to have the cross-sectional area of the sprue slightly better as compared to the runner cross-sectional area as well as ingates cross-sectional area. This pressurized gating system reduces the back pressure, thus eliminating the aspiration effect. I have discussed about the aspiration defect in unit number 2. Okay. So here these are generally used for heavy metals. Compared to non-pressurized type of system, we are going to have more yield in case of pressurized gating system. Okay. So reverse gate is an example for non-pressurized, whereas horn gate, direct horn gate is an example of pressurized gating system. Okay. I hope you understood. Non-pressurized gating system, simple example is reverse horn gate, whereas for pressurized it is the horn gate. Okay. This is gating ratio. We are going to come across this while we solve certain numericals during the design of gates and ingates. Okay. So next part is the risers. As we have seen, riser is this part we call it as a riser. Okay, other parts remain same. Mold cavity, sprue base, runner, here we are going to discuss what is riser, functions of riser, and location of riser. First of all, let us know what is riser. Riser is that part in the mold box from where the molten metal is going to come out once the mold cavity is filled. Okay. The rise of metal inside the mold cavity can be seen or determined by using this part called as riser. As we see the rise of the metal, we call it as riser. Okay. It plays a very crucial role in order to get defect-free castings. It has multiple functions. Okay. So here, coming to this part, functions of the riser. First one is it acts as a feeder. Okay. First one is it acts as a feeder. So when we are going to pour the molten metal inside the pouring basin, the metal flows through this channel and then it fills this space, and after that finally it comes out from this. As and when the metal solidifies over here, the shrinkage occurs, and at that time the metal over here is going to feed inside this because of two reasons. One is the atmospheric pressure. As it is open to the atmosphere, so that force will act as a feeding force for the mold cavity along with the gravitational force. Okay, so it acts as a feeder. Then it allows the gases to pass. Gases are passed by this riser. Then it assists in directional solidification. it makes more permeable. That is a more technical word we can make use of than directional solidification. Then we have, it helps in pouring process. Okay. So instead of saying, it allows the gases to pass through it, it increases the permeability of the entire mold box, and that is one of the function of the riser, that is going to reduce the defects like porosity or the defects like pinholes and blowholes. The holes which are having the dimension less than 2 millimeter are called as the pinholes, more than 2 millimeter are called as blowholes. These defects occur due to the presence of gas inside the mold cavity. These gases will not allow the metal in those vicinity, in the area where these gases are present, gas pockets are present, there metal will not solidify. It will occupy the neighboring space and thus forming a crater, and such type of defect we call it as blowhole. Okay. So sometimes what happens during solidification itself, the gases will come out from the surface and those will create small holes, and those are also called as blowholes. If the dimension is more than 2 millimeter, we call it as blowholes. If it is less than 2 millimeter, we call it as pinholes. Okay. Then directional solidification. So what happens here, this is the last part that is going to get solidified. Okay. So because of that, the thermal gradient will be maintained, and this thermal gradient is the actual driving force for directional solidification. In the last class, we have discussed what is the meaning of directional solidification. In order to achieve that, proper design of riser is required. Okay. A question may arise in your mind, as this riser is open to the atmosphere, how it is going to solidify at the end? There is something called as volume by area ratio. Volume by area ratio, that is volume of the riser to the cross-sectional area of the riser, its square is always maintained such that it will be greater than volume divided by area, cross-sectional area ratio square, that of the casting. By this, we can make certain that the riser is the last part that is going to get solidified. Apart from that, we are going to attach something called as exothermic sleeves. Okay, these sleeves are having the chemicals. When they come in contact with the molten metal, they are going to generate heat. Exothermic reaction is going to take place, and this heat is sufficient to maintain the metal in the molten state. Okay, so we make use of this exothermic sleeves. Another general routine process is we start heating this particular part by external sources, which is generally not done. In most of the cases, we make use of exothermic sleeves. These exothermic sleeves are made up of ferrous, magnesium, cobalt, aluminum oxides, and these are generally attached at the top face of the riser. Okay. And of course, generally what happens here, one layer at the topmost layer solidifies at the beginning, but it doesn't mean that the metal inside this is solidified. Okay, because of this exothermic sleeves and because of this condition, we are going to get the riser in the molten state till the entire casting gets solidified, and in the meantime the riser acts as a feeder and feeds for the shrinkage that is going to take place, and it has to maintain the feeding pressure. What happens, the riser is open to the atmosphere. Okay, this pressure difference will give rise to something called as a feeding force. Otherwise, if nothing is open to the atmosphere, then whatever we are going to pour is going to stuck in between. Okay, the proper feeding will not take place with a proper velocity. So at that time, this riser which is open to the atmosphere is going to drive the feeding pressure. Okay, so because of the differences between the atmospheric pressure and the pressure inside this, we are going to have this feeding pressure. So these are all the functions of the riser. The next question comes is the location of the riser. Where the riser has to be located. The location is very, very important. In most of the castings, the riser is located at the topmost part of the casting. Okay. In order to make sure whether entire mold cavity is filled or not, we are going to see the location of the riser at the topmost part of the casting. So that is where this is going to satisfy this particular process, that is pouring process. As a person who is going to pour the molten metal with the help of the ladle inside this pouring basin, he should know when to stop pouring. Okay, so that they generally come to know once molten metal comes out from this particular part. Okay. Another location of the riser will be the sides of the casting. Okay. So in certain cases we require the risers which are having more dimension as compared to the casting surface, nearly same or more in some cases, especially in case of steel. The riser dimensions whatever we get by the calculation or practically will be more. The casting yield is also less in case of steels, whereas in case of certain metals like grey cast iron, the dimensions we get is slightly less, or the casting yield will be somewhere around 75%. We are going to do certain calculations today on this casting yield. So the location plays a very important role. So instead of giving a bigger riser at the top of the casting, what we can do is we have multiple risers situated at multiple locations. Okay. So the location of the riser is always done at the topmost part of the casting as well as at the sides. The functionality remains same. The pouring process has to take place smoothly. Okay. So next, coming to the part, types of risers. We have two different types of riser, open riser and blind riser. This is the riser, pouring cup or pouring basin, sprue, sprue base, mold cavity, then this is the runner. So in most of the cases where gas generated will be more, in case of heavy castings, in case of the castings which generally gives out a large amount of gases, we generally go for the open type of riser. The drawback of this is the layer at the top of this is going to solidify. and sometimes because of this there will be the pressure drop that is going to take place inside this, and this will give rise to the reduced feeding force. Okay, and because of that the shrinkage effect will occur. So here it is a very simple in structure and it can be made very easily. Okay, and casting yield is also very good in case of the open riser. Okay, only drawback is the directional solidification, so that can be compensated by making use of something called as blind riser. Here the riser is not open to the atmosphere. So here it is again a pouring basin. It is a permeable sand core. Let's explain about this. This is the blind riser. Okay. So here in case of blind riser, you can see there is this riser which is not open to the atmosphere. Okay, and because of this, till the end of the casting that gets solidified, we are going to have a high thermal gradient. That is, the metal is going to remain in the molten state and it starts feeding the molten metal to the casting. The drawback of this process is the feeding force. As it is not open to the atmosphere, there will be a reduced difference, or there will be less, very less pressure difference, and because of that the feeding force will be reduced. So in order to overcome this, also in order to release the gases that are built up inside, we are going to make use of a sand core which is having a good permeability. As I explained in the lab as well as in the class, permeability is the ability of the sand mold or the sand cores to allow the gases to pass through them. Okay, that is what is called as permeability. So here the sand cores which are having a good permeability are inserted at the top of this blind core, which makes sure that the force, driving force, is consistent. Okay, after that again I have shown a riser over here on the top of the casting. In order to make sure whether the molten metal is filled inside the mold cavity or not, we are going to have this particular riser, but it is having a very small dimension as compared to the open riser. Okay, here the function of this riser is only to make sure whether the mold cavity is filled or not. It is done in most of the cases in the industrial practice, but if you refer textbooks, these are not shown, but it is exactly located on the top. Nowadays what we do is we drill the flow-offs that acts as a multiple risers in case of this blind riser. So here generally small drills are holed. Okay, in that case also small drills are holed in order to make sure that almost all the gases will escape. Okay, and the gases are not allowed to entrap inside, and thus getting blowholes free as well as pinhole free castings. Okay, so these are the different types of risers that are used in sand casting. And the next one comes is casting aid. Casting aid. During melting, we generally don't make use of the fresh raw material 100%. It will be the combination of multiple materials. That is so these are the sources of the raw material in case of melting. This is what we call it as a charge. So after pouring, there will be different losses as well as different weight. The important one is the casting. Then we have something called as fettling losses. I'll come to this. Then we have gating system. Okay. So before coming to the concept of casting yield, I would like to explain how the casting process takes place. That is the flow of the material, the metal in case of this casting. So here, first one is the melting. As I told you, the metals which can be melted can be cast. So let us understand what all combinations of the metals we take for melting. So one is the new raw material. For example, we take grey cast iron. Okay. So here the pig iron that is obtained is nothing but new material. That is a fresh material which acts as a raw material for making the grey cast iron. That is added inside the furnace. But if I am going to add 100% of that, then it will not be economical for the foundryman. So in order to make the process more economical, what they generally do is they add scraps which is having almost similar composition as that of the metal what we want, okay, along with the castings that are rejected, that is the castings which are having the defects. Okay, so here the fettled parts, as I told you, fettling is a process where we are going to trim the components of the gating system that are attached to the casting once casting gets solidified. So what happens to this gating system which are solidified during the solidification of the casting itself? So those parts are also used as a raw material for melting. Okay, those are heated by using the furnaces. Different types of furnaces we are going to discuss in the next part of this particular unit. Okay, here consider it to be the induction furnace. So we are going to add all this in the induction furnace. So once that is melted, the ladle is used to take out the molten metal from the furnace, and this ladle is again further used to pour the molten metal in the sand mold. So once we pour it, some amount of the molten metal will get solidified and it becomes casting. Some amount will be the gating and rising part, whatever this part, and this part also it gets solidified, and that is nothing but gating system. And there will be small projection lines as well as splattering of the metal that may take place inside the mold box, and splashing effect will also happen. So that comes as a fettling loss. Remember here we are going to also trim the extra projections that we get at the surface of the casting. So that can also be used as a scrap for melting. Okay, so these things we are going to get. So at this particular part, we will see that the casting weight is less compared to the weight of the metal that is poured. Okay. So in order to explain why it is less, I have used this particular flow diagram, especially this part. Okay, this will give to this particular concept. So here casting yield is nothing but it is the ratio of the casting weight to the pouring weight. Suppose CW is the casting weight and PW is the pouring weight, then casting yield is given as casting weight divided by weight of the metal poured. Weight of metal poured into 100, that is CW divided by PW into 100. So this is nothing but casting yield. As it is mentioned always in terms of percentage, we multiply it by 100. Okay, as it is mentioned in terms of percentage. Always remember, cast irons have good yield. It ranges from 70 to 75%, whereas for steel and other metals it is slightly less. As the riser requirement will be very less for cast iron, we have a very good casting yield. And here again, in fettling losses, I forgot to tell, runner part is riser part is also used as a input material or charge over here. Okay, so that is also trim. There are again, a grinding process. What we generally do in the foundry while fettling. Fettling, as I told you, it is nothing but trimming of the gating system and unwanted projections, especially gating system. So we make use of the grinding process in order to remove the unwanted projections as well as gating system. We do something called as a putty grinding, okay, which is done throughout the surface in order to make sure that the surface becomes smooth, okay, because there will be unwanted projections on the surface of the casting. This is the sand grains here. So we don't get perfectly smooth surface of the casting, okay, we get something like this. So these are also trimmed off, and the collection of this can also be used as a charge. Okay, so that is the so casting yield is found by using this. So this is the first step that we generally do in case of foundry. There is something called as a feasibility study that they perform, where they are going to make sure that what is the casting yield, and this is most important while making sure that what is the cost of the casting. Okay, because castings are generally costed as per their weight. Okay, per kg weight, there will be cost for the casting. So for that reason, casting yield is very important. We are going to solve one numerical on this. Find the amount of metal can say molten metal to be poured to get, in order to get a casting of weight 1 kg. Consider casting yield as 60%. Okay. We know the casting weight as 1 kg. These are the given data. Pouring weight has to be determined. Casting yield is 60%. We know that casting yield is equal to casting weight divided by pouring weight into 100. We know this as 60%. This is 1 kg. This we don't know, and this is multiplied by 100. Okay. So pouring weight is nothing but 1 divided by 0.6. So this is what we are going to get if we calculate this. It is going to be 1.666 kgs. This is one of the most simple problems. Now let us solve a problem which is a bit complicated compared to this. Find the casting yield for the casting find the sorry find the amount of metal to be poured to be poured for the casting shown in figure. Shown in figure. Consider casting yield is as 75%. The metal to be cast is cast iron. Okay. So this is the geometry, simple geometry we will take. This is the dimension rectangular slab of dimension 100 mm by 200 mm by 50 mm is considered, and we are going to find the amount of metal to be poured for this type of casting. Okay, here we are going to consider the metal as cast iron. So the density of cast iron is how much? Density of cast iron 7.3 grams per centimeter. This is the density. Okay. First, let us convert these dimensions in terms of centimeter. As these are all in mm, this is nothing but 10 centimeter, 20 centimeters, and 5 centimeters. Okay. The density of metals is very important. For aluminium, density of aluminium is nearly 2.7 grams per centimeter cube. For cast iron, as I mentioned, it is 7.3 to 7.8 grams per centimeter cube. For steel, it is 8.05 grams per centimeter cube. So here, weight of the casting we need to find out. Okay. So here density means what? Mass by volume. And here volume of the casting is what? This particular dimension. Weight of the casting is equal to volume of the casting into density of the cast iron. So this is 10 by 20 by 5. This is centimeter cube into 7.3 grams per centimeter. So see why I have written all the dimensions in terms of centimeter. Whatever value I get, it has to be in terms of only one unit. Okay, that is the reason. As we have density in terms of grams per centimeter cube, I have converted everything in terms of centimeter cube, so that this centimeter cube and this centimeter cube cancels. What remains is in terms of grams. So the value of this is 7,300 grams or 7.3 kgs. Okay. Now casting yield is equal to casting weight divided by pouring weight into 100. Casting yield is given, that is 75%. Casting weight is 7.3 kgs, pouring weight we don't know, into 100, that is pouring weight is equal to 77.3 divided by 0.75. So 7.3 divided by 0.75. We get it as 9.8.